Okay, thank you for the opportunity to give you guys an update on prevention today. So I was asked to talk about prevention and preventing the movement of aquatic invasive species. My name is Tom Wolf, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Bureau Chief, and I also have the benefit of having 10 years experience in Idaho working for that Aquatic Invasive Species program, and I have some very fond memories of working on Bear Lake back in the day prior to milfoil being detected out there, I will say. Um, very basic to start. What are aquatic invasive species and how do they spread? We're talking about mussels like zebra and quagga mussels, clams, fish, snails, crayfish, turtles, frogs, and weeds like Eurasian water milfoil. Our pathways for those species to spread: watercraft are a primary pathway to move a lot of these aquatic invasive species around, and that's why regionally we put a lot of effort into watercraft inspection as our prevention technique. Also, water-based equipment, wading boots and gear can move things. Aquarium releases, so dumping aquariums can introduce a lot of different aquatic invasive species. Ornamental ponds, so pretty flowering pond plants in your backyard are great when they're in their little pond, but not so great when they get into rivers and streams. Also, all these aquatic species move very easily downstream. So if there's flow, that flow will move them to new locations downstream. And intentional release. We do have people that like some species that let them go on purpose. In particular, illegal release of fish is really common. So you get undesirable species of fish released by bucket biologists. So very basic just to start here. Why are these things an issue? Probably everybody's familiar, but they damage fisheries. When we talk about things like zebra and quagga mussels, they stick to things. And so that really is impactful for irrigated agriculture, for hydropower, electric generation. Things like Eurasian milfoil, hydrilla, they disrupt flow. So when you're talking about flow in irrigation ditches and that type of thing, they cause significant problems. They degrade water quality. They reduce property values. So a water body with Eurasian milfoil, it's a solid mass of plants, that property value is less than it would be if it was nice, clear, blue Bear Lake water. So those impacts have been documented. And these things are difficult to get rid of. At least with aquatic plants, we have some good tools to go after them. Zebra and quagga mussels, there's that treatment that's going on in Idaho now. So there are some tools, but those tools get more difficult as we get into animal species. And just referencing zebra and quagga mussels, and I'll probably talk about those a little bit just because of their economic impact and their threats to Bear Lake and the region, and how much focus we put on prevention for zebra and quagga mussels. Montana Invasive Species Council put out a report that estimated over $230 million annual cost to the state of Montana if zebra and quagga mussels were introduced to the state. So their impacts are significant, and they hit everybody in the pocketbook if they show up. So that's the value of prevention, trying to hold the line to keep these things out, keep them from moving around, saves money, saves aquatic resources. It's a good investment. So for prevention, our main tool that we used in the West is watercraft inspection. Every Western state and province has a watercraft inspection program. Some are set up at boat ramps, and some are set up at roadside and locations with high traffic. They're coming in from places that have invasive species. Inspection stations set up to intercept those boats as they're coming into a state or jurisdiction. For aquatic invasive species, states tend to have the management authority over the water. So most of the watercraft inspection stations in the West are managed by state invasive species programs. In Montana, so I'm going to talk a little bit too much about Montana because that's what I'm familiar with. But in Montana, we delegate that authority to partners. We contract with tribes, conservation districts, and counties to get those inspection stations out in local communities. When we talk about these inspection stations too, we really coordinate closely between states. So if a boat is intercepted with mussels on it, that's going from Montana to Utah. We contact the state of Utah, let them know that boat is coming so that they can follow up when it arrives, just to make sure everything's clean. And each state's statute is met, as far as the requirement of cleanliness of that boat, and making sure mussels are no longer viable or existing on that water. Several states have mandatory inspection authorities. So the states of Wyoming and Montana have a mandatory inspection before launch requirement. So if you're bringing a boat into the state, it has to have an inspection before it launches. Idaho, I believe, just passed legislation this last session to also have that requirement. But I think across the West, I believe every jurisdiction requires an inspection of a boat that's coming out of a mussel impacted water. So I believe that's the case in Utah as well. But each state's authority and law is a little bit different. But each state's authority is targeted at primarily zebra and quagga mussel prevention, but also it captures all these other species, including Eurasian milfoil, with that clean, drain, dry message. So boats and equipment, water-based equipment, are required to be clean with no plants, mud, mussels, things like that, drained of all standing water, and all compartments dry. And that helps prevent the movement of zebra and quagga mussels, but all these other species from one place to another. So that's that clean, drain, dry message. Again, that Montana flavor here, but getting that clean, drain, dry message out to the public. That just, if the public do their part, they help prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species, including mussels, milfoil, snails, a lot of other things. This is a map of watercraft inspection stations in the West, and it's an incomplete map, but you'll see a lot of locations, all Western states and provinces working together, following similar protocols to inspect watercraft to prevent the movement of aquatic invasive species. It's a vast effort in the West, supported heavily by Army Corps of Engineers through funding support, and also funded through state funding mechanisms, each a little bit different in Western states. And all of us follow similar protocols. So UMPS, Uniform Minimum Programs and Standards, is something that was developed through the Western Regional Panel with the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force that lays out standard protocols and procedures for watercraft inspection and prevention. It's targeted for the West, but it's now used nationally. Really setting those base standards to make sure every inspection is addressing that aquatic invasive species threat. It provides training, it provides decontamination procedures, and equipment standards. So you can find all these standards at westernregionalpanel.org. On that website, all those documents are there if you're interested. But just to emphasize, all our Western states work really closely together and use similar protocols based on this to address the threat of aquatic invasive species movement on watercraft. Really briefly, what's going on in Montana, just for a snapshot. 17 roadside inspection stations are operated in Montana through conservation districts, tribes, and counties. Most of our stations are contracted through partners. Over 100,000 inspections this season. 46 watercraft were intercepted with mussels. 550 were intercepted with weeds, and a good portion of those were Eurasian milfoil being transported on watercraft. We also do early detection sampling. Over 3,000 samples were processed this year with no evidence of mussels in Montana to date. We do have Eurasian milfoil in several locations. We do have some eradication projects that are down to single plant removal at this point. So we've been making some progress and some new early detection water bodies where Eurasian milfoil has been detected. Again, partners manage our staff inspection stations. Our inspection stations are focused on the borders of the state, also on the Continental Divide, and entering the Flathead Basin. Our statute requires inspection before launch for any of those boats going into the state, across the Divide, and into the Flathead Basin. This is a graphic that we have in Montana, and I think every other jurisdiction uses similar graphics to show how far boats are coming to and through our states. This is a particular station in Ravalli, Montana. It's operated by the Confederate Salish and Kootenai tribes. This is one inspection station, one season, and where those boats are coming from that inspection station saw. So boats are traveling a long distance, coming from a lot of places with a lot of invasive species. And every state and jurisdiction can provide information like that because we see similar things across the West. This is where mussel-fouled boats were coming from and where they were going with Montana's data. Montana's data is different than what you see in Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, with more of a use pattern coming out of Lake Powell for zebra and quagga mussels. We don't see as much of that in Montana. But every state in the West also has data like this that can show where the threat, at least where zebra and quagga mussels are coming from on watercraft. Speaking again about zebra and quagga mussels, this is the distribution nationally. The stars represent populations that have popped up just in the last 2 years of zebra and quagga mussels in the western states. Idaho is currently working on an eradication project in Snake River. But if that treatment isn't effective, and if some of these other populations continue to expand, we can see them move downstream in the Snake River, in the Colorado River, upstream in the main stem Missouri system. As these things expand, it's going to get harder to prevent them from coming into our jurisdictions, our various water bodies. And when we look at Bear Lake, you guys are surrounded, kind of like Montana is at this point. We're talking about milfoil today, but don't want to forget these other species that can be extremely impactful. You've got milfoil, you're going to deal with it on however you can. With prevention, you still have the opportunity to keep out zebra and quagga mussels, and working together to try to hold the line on that is a valuable endeavor. When we talk about prevention as well, there's other pathways through aquariums. I don't know if Bear Lake Watch uses the Don't Let It Loose campaign, but I know the state of Idaho and the state of Utah does. Basically getting that message out to pet owners, because that's a pathway for a lot of invasive things and a lot of invasive plant species of people dumping aquariums. That Don't Let It Loose message is really important to get out to the public, to put it locations where people have a lot of interaction with the water body, where there's an urban environment close to the water, making sure people are aware it's never okay to dump aquarium pets. And this is an example of reports that we've received just this year of aquarium pet releases in Montana, reported through iNaturalist and also directly to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So it's a pathway Bear Lake needs to definitely be aware of and be trying to address. Okay, so protecting our waters is getting more challenging as these things get closer. We need to explore alternative strategies to ensure boats comply with our inspection requirements in the West. And through regional coordination and empowering locally driven efforts is a great way to get that done. And Bear Lake Watch, I've worked with you guys for a long time in the past and are a great resource to help get this stuff on the ground and get people working on this issue locally. Really quickly as well, a couple meetings that you should be aware of if you're interested. Next week is a meeting in Grand Junction of the Western Regional Panel for the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. It's in Grand Junction, but it's also a virtual link is available. Reach out to me if you want more information on that, and we can get you signed up. Also, Montana has an invasive species summit coming up in November. Aquatic on the 13th, terrestrial on the 14th. Virtual attendance is available for those meetings as well. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do in Montana, let me know and we can get you signed up for those as well. Thank you.